For 3 decades, I devoted my entire existence to my son Ethan. I channeled all my energy into nurturing him, laboring without rest, tending to him during sicknesses, covering the costs of his schooling. I even forfeited my marriage and my personal dreams simply to ensure he enjoyed a superior future. Yet, the instant I revealed to him that I'd been let go from my position, his initial reaction was to evict me, branding me as a worthless encumbrance, a leech. That was the point where I ceased suppressing my self-respect. I declined to remain the parent who was continually disregarded. I resolved to defend myself, despite assuming I owned nothing. What he remained unaware of was that my former boss, who had genuinely valued me over the long period of commitment I'd shown, had bequeathed me a vast sum. And this occasion, I'd guarantee he grasped that the repercussions of his treachery would surpass anything he could fathom. I'd barely arrived at the house when I informed my son Ethan that I no longer held employment with Catherine. I hadn't yet had the chance to clarify the reason before his expression soured, and he interrupted me abruptly. His tone escalated harshly, his cheeks reddening with fury. "Why did you decide to leave so unexpectedly? That position brought in $8,000 each month. What do you intend to do from here? Simply lounge about and sponge off us?" The slight happiness I'd experienced upon returning evaporated right away. Did he truly believe I'd abandoned that role merely to relax? I'd come back with the goal of simplifying things for them. His remark struck me like a physical blow, but I held back from retaliating. I understood he'd faced significant strain in recent times. His spouse Nicole hailed from a background that always viewed ours with disdain. Her mom is a college instructor, and her dad holds a position in municipal administration. They'd perpetually dismissed Ethan's origins. To them, their child had wed someone inferior. Nicole, mirroring their attitude, frequently mocked him, criticizing his earnings, his roots, whatever she could to erode his self-esteem. Nevertheless, I assumed that upon learning of the legacy Catherine had granted me, $8 million, they'd at last regard Ethan differently, perhaps even afford him a measure of dignity for a change. But I held off on mentioning the funds for the moment. Instead, I brought up the additional motive for my return. "Didn't you mention that Nicole aims to conceive shortly?" I figured I'd return ahead of schedule to assist, aid her throughout the gestation, support her healing post-delivery, and possibly help with the infant. Nicole's demeanor chilled immediately. I could almost detect a derisive snort from her. "Recovery after childbirth demands expert attention," she stated bluntly. "You previously served as a domestic cleaner. What expertise do you possess in that area?" Her mother Susan cast me a scornful glance and interjected without delay. "Managing an infant goes beyond changing nappies and feeding. It's a specialized field. You require proper instruction. This isn't a task for novices." The pair of them coordinated their belittling remarks so effortlessly, it was evident they'd practiced this exchange beforehand. And in that moment, I'd been dismissed as an inadequate helper. I let out a quiet, resentful chuckle inwardly. Nothing had shifted. They continued to perceive me as inferior. Still, to maintain harmony, I compelled a grin and responded, "Well, if arrangements are already in place, I won't interfere. I'll defer the childcare to you." Susan sighed dramatically, as if that were the sole reasonable comment I'd made that night. "All right," she answered, "but you'll handle the expenses for the childcare provider and the infant specialist. I'll manage the selection and oversight." That single statement rendered me mute, a constricting sensation building in my torso. My son Ethan leaped in immediately, continuing from where Susan had paused without interruption. "Precisely, Mom. You shouldn't have resigned from that role. Our costs are set to increase twofold soon. You truly need to continue earning." That's when the realization struck me vividly. They'd never desired my return for relaxation. They merely required a consistent income stream directed into the family. To them, I represented little more than a worker, a mobile cash dispenser. My expression stiffened. "I'm 58. I believe it's appropriate for me to enjoy some downtime and step away from work." "Step away from work?" Nicole emitted a scornful chuckle. "You lack even a retirement fund. What sort of withdrawal from employment are you referring to?" Her statement almost winded me. "I'd aimed to contribute to a pension scheme long ago, It was all of you who advised me to conserve those funds and assist in settling your home loan sooner instead. Now you're using that against me? Nicole flipped her locks and retorted sharply, "That's due to your meager earnings. Who advised you to acquire a property you couldn't manage without borrowing? You ought to have prepared more effectively." Ethan, now attempting to soothe Nicole, elevated his volume toward me. "That's sufficient, Mom." Nicole's attempting to become expectant. "You're merely adding to her anxiety. This is the period when we truly require the funds, and you ought to contribute. You're still in excellent condition. There's no justification for you not continuing to labor for another 2 decades. Reserve the withdrawal discussion for when you're 80. Another 2 decades? I stiffened, emptied by a surge of sorrow I couldn't articulate. After all I'd surrendered, every concession, every shift endured, every cent gained, I remained merely a revenue generator to them. That's when I genuinely perceived the reality. All the discussions of esteem and appreciation were merely disguised deceptions to sustain my productivity. During the time Ethan was pursuing his degree, he'd already begun a relationship with Nicole. To enable them a more comfortable existence and to satisfy Nicole's critical relatives, I abandoned my surroundings and relocated to a different urban area to serve as a resident domestic helper, solely to accumulate sufficient funds to acquire a residence for them. They hadn't contributed a single penny, yet the title listed only their identities. And in that era, with moisture in their gazes, they assured me that someday, when our situation improves, we'll look after you. You'll at last receive the existence you merit. But now I recognize what they implied by the existence I merit, an existence of perpetual toil until my physique collapses at 80. I restrained my sobs, stabilized my speech, and declared resolutely, "I stated I'm withdrawing from work." That's conclusive. No individual dictates that choice for me. Susan must have sensed my determination and feared I might genuinely cease providing for them. Her manner softened right away. "Listen, it's not that we fail to comprehend. You simply must be practical. There's no extra space in the residence for you. You can't anticipate residing here indefinitely, correct? But I possess a suggestion." I squinted, something in her look causing unease in my gut. "I know of an affluent household seeking a resident aid, solid compensation, accommodation, and meals provided. You've performed that type of duty previously. It should be a straightforward shift," Nicole interjected with a sly grin. "Ideal suggestion, in fact. You could even assist in reducing our monetary strain. Any income you generate could support family costs. Beneficial for everyone, right?" Susan lifted her shoulders and contributed. "You're not the type who truly requires relaxation anyhow. Returning to employment wouldn't harm you. Don't reject it so hastily, just attempt it. If you excel, you might secure a permanent position." My demeanor grew icier with each passing moment. "I've already resigned. I'm not entering anyone's home to labor again." Susan's grin faded. Her stare became piercing, now assessing. "Well, if you're truly finished with serving others, that's acceptable." She hesitated, her speech abruptly casual, but infused with coercion. "There's a facility for elders close by, quality amenities, adequate food and housing. You could seek a labor-based arrangement, perhaps assisting in the kitchen, maintenance tasks, something to cover your stay." Nicole sighed dramatically and sneered. "Now that's more sensible. You can't simply occupy a lodge and anticipate us to cover the charges. At least in supported housing, you'd be contributing your share. Cease anticipating us to support you." Fury bubbled within my torso, but I compelled myself to remain steady. I faced Ethan. "Do you genuinely believe it's proper to dispatch your own parent to mop surfaces in a senior center merely to sustain herself?" His gaze shifted aside, but he attempted to uphold his logical facade. "Mom, be sensible. You've always claimed you desired autonomy. Isn't this the most honorable method? You maintain yourself, and we owe nothing to one another. And moreover," he continued, retrieving his device, "there's a vacancy open immediately. I inquired earlier to confirm. You could relocate as early as this day." Then, directly before me, he commenced contacting the number once more. I could scarcely accept what I was observing. The offspring I'd invested my whole being in cultivating was now so keen to expel me, as if I were merely excess baggage. My palms shook, and tears cascaded down my cheeks, uncontrollable. Ethan, I sacrificed all I possessed to nurture you. I depleted my reserves to acquire a dwelling for you, and now, in this instant, you view me solely as an inconvenience you eagerly wish to discard. Is this the manner you reciprocate your parent? For a fleeting instant, remorse flashed in his gaze, but it was swiftly overtaken by wrath. He overturned my luggage, causing it to collide with the ground. You believe you endured? That was your decision. If you hadn't separated from my father, we wouldn't have become impoverished. I could have matured affluent, and you demolished that. Let me inform you, Margaret, you are indebted to me for the remainder of your existence. I remained there, astonished and mute, gazing into his reddened eyes as a persistent, throbbing agony ripped through my core, like a dull blade rotating gradually, carving into all that remained. He had no awareness that the sole cause I ended my union with his dad was for his benefit. If I hadn't departed that partnership, his alleged prosperous father would never have acknowledged him as his offspring. In reality, he might have been placed in temporary care, handled like an unwanted stray. Every forfeiture I endured, every selection, every drop of sorrow was to grant him an opportunity at a complete existence. But here he stood, retaliating like a trapped creature, faulting me for ruining the very prospects I strived so diligently to safeguard. I placed a palm on my chest, attempting to calm the turmoil within, but the pain merely intensified. All those periods of commitment, of renunciation, of affection abruptly seemed like the harshest prank existence could inflict upon me. Ethan wasn't my natural offspring. He was taken in. The initial occasion I encountered him, I was assisting at the Municipal Youth Protection Facility. He was scarcely a year old at that point, delicate as a young cat, mouth shaded bluish, his small frame devoid of vitality. The supervisor informed me Ethan had entered the world with a critical innate cardiac issue. His original guardians had deserted him in a waste container. A bystander detected his weak whimpers and delivered him to the shelter. I still can't pinpoint precisely what attracted me to him. Perhaps it was how his fearful, yearning eyes locked onto mine, or maybe because I'd forfeited my own parent at a tender age. Witnessing a youngster endure felt intolerable to me. I returned to my residence and conversed about it with my spouse at the time. After considerable reflection, we resolved to take him in. From that instant, we journeyed across the nation, seeking medical centers and experts, exerting all efforts to preserve Ethan's existence. But 2 years afterward, my spouse altered. He declared he was weary of rearing another person's offspring. He desired his own descendant. He presented me with a demand: return Ethan to the shelter or depart from him and nurture the youngster solo. I didn't waver. I selected Ethan. That period, his health remained precarious. I was horrified that returning to the shelter would result in postponed care or, worse, the conclusion of his existence. So I toiled extra hours, occasionally 3 occupations simultaneously. At night, I'd perch at the dining surface, vision stinging, crafting handmade items merely to gather additional revenue. And somehow, amid those extended, hopeless periods, I sustained him. He endured, healed, and ultimately grew as robust as any other youth, even advancing to higher education. I never disclosed the facts about his history to him, not out of intent to deceive, but because I didn't wish to weigh him down. He was already a delicate, uncertain youngster. I didn't want him to bear the load of realizing he was initially discarded by his birth guardians, then spurned by his adoptive dad. I desired him to trust that the world could yet be compassionate, that genuine affection did persist, but never in my darkest visions did I envision he'd mature into this frigid, self-centered, unappreciative individual. As enraged as I feel now, there's also a spark of solace. Thank heavens I never referenced the inheritance. If they were aware that the $8 million had already been lawfully assigned to me, I can only picture how much more repulsive this would have grown. I regarded Ethan, my stare frozen and unwavering. If this is the extent of your callousness, then fine. From this instant forward, we're severed. You and I share no connection anymore. I bent down, retrieved my luggage, and pivoted to depart, but Susan abruptly seized my limb. What are you declaring? Ethan is your offspring. You're meant to be accountable for his prospects. You can't simply gather your belongings and exit like this. Nicole advanced, mirroring her mom's indignation. Yeah, what sort of parent behaves that way? You nurtured him, and now you aim to abandon responsibility? That's incredibly negligent. I released a frigid chuckle. You're an academic instructor, a learned individual, and this is the reasoning you're presenting? By law, a guardian is only required to provide for an offspring until they reach 18. Me? I've sustained Ethan well into his 30s. What more does he demand? Ethan's features contorted, his speech escalating in rage. That's not guardianship. That's you compensating for your poor decisions and attempting to atone for your remorse. Every wretched aspect of my existence stems from you. You are obligated to me eternally. Then he bellowed, his words saturated with malice. Did you seek my consent when you chose to introduce me to this world? I nearly erupted into laughter at the absolute insanity of it. He appeared utterly unhinged. I observed him as if he were an unfamiliar person, someone I no longer identified. I must have been oblivious to have cultivated someone like you. And if you harbor such profound, distorted existential inquiries, perhaps you should direct them to your birth parent, the one who abandoned you in a waste container. I wasn't certain if he even comprehended what I'd just uttered. He paused momentarily, bewildered, but the anger still adhered to his features. It didn't matter if he grasped it or not, it no longer pertained to me. I dislodged Susan's hold and exited through the entrance without glancing rearward. Almost instantly, I heard furious yells trailing me. You're renouncing your own offspring? You're not even humane. Don't become too arrogant, Margaret. When you're elderly, ill, and nobody desires to tend to you, let's observe how far that self-reliance carries you. No one will employ a female of your years. When you reach the lowest point, don't return pleading to us. I halted, rotated gradually, and regarded them with serene indifference. You ought to concern yourselves more. I stated composedly. Don't overlook the residence you're occupying. That dwelling you regard as your inherent entitlement was acquired with every cent I amassed over the years. If I ever choose to reclaim it, don't assume you'll still possess a shelter. Nicole rushed to the threshold, extending a digit toward my visage, fuming with wrath. Don't you dare interfere with this residence. It's documented under my and Ethan's identities. It's lawfully ours. You hold no rights. The more she yelled, the more stable I felt. Fine, I responded, my speech unyielding. Then heed this. I don't mind if I must expend the value of 2 residences. I will not permit this dwelling to remain with a group of thankless parasites. Nicole's gaze expanded in skepticism, then she erupted into laughter, her tone derisive. You've gone insane. 2 residences? You likely don't even possess $1,000 in your possession. This dwelling belongs to us. It's our shared asset. You're merely some obsolete servant attempting to overreach. Depart. Individuals like you merit decay on the pavement. With that, she closed the entrance forcefully in my face. I didn't reply, I didn't debate, I didn't even recoil. I simply turned toward the lift, extracted my device, and began scanning advertisements for upscale residences in the city's premier districts. A resentful grin tugged at my mouth. If I didn't relocate to the finest home in the area, I'd be dishonoring the $8 million securely nestled in my inheritance account. That evening, I registered at the most opulent 5-star lodging in the Central District. Then I reached out to Catherine's confidential legal advisor and directed him to commence the judicial steps to recover all that was justifiably mine. In the subsequent days, I resided in that lodging while immersing myself in the city's high-end property sector, examining options, assessing postings, and organizing inspections. A week afterward, I had a scheduled visit to explore a highly desirable secured estate development. It was the most elite project in the region. What I hadn't foreseen was that the representative designated to present the asset to me was none other than Susan's relative, Chloe. The upscale property exhibition hall was teeming with visitors. Even though the base cost for these estates exceeded $1 million, the venture's prestige had attracted a consistent flow of interested purchasers. I'd just entered the expansive entrance area when a youthful female with extended tresses and a vibrant, enthusiastic grin neared me. Good afternoon, madam. Would you like me to guide you through the development specifics? Yes, please. Could you begin by displaying the sample residences? I trailed her toward the presentation zone, But we hadn't progressed more than a couple of paces when a cutting voice echoed throughout the space. "Who's managing client evaluation today? Do we permit just anybody to enter now?" I glanced upward. There she stood, Chloe, Susan's kin, Nicole's relative. We'd encountered each other only a handful of occasions, but she'd made an enduring impact, a typical status seeker demeanor, the sort that exudes superiority in every phrase and gesture. Perpetually boasting about dealing exclusively with elite clientele, before I could respond, she was already marching over, footwear tapping assertively, eyes brimming with contempt. "Margaret, what are you doing in this place?" I eyed her coolly and proceeded walking. "I'm here to inspect an asset. Is there an issue?" She promptly positioned herself ahead of me, obstructing my route with a smirk. "A domestic servant? You believe you can purchase here? Don't claim you're merely here for the complimentary beverages. I've encountered many like you, feigning interest in buying just to grab some gratis treats." Individuals in the vicinity started looking over, murmuring, their looks conveying that awkward blend of criticism and intrigue, some even subtly agreeing as if to affirm, "She's correct." The youthful aide next to me addressed softly, trying to ease the tension. "Chloe, I'm not occupied at the moment. I can escort this woman around." But Chloe pushed her away without pause, eyes blazing with scorn. "And who are you to instruct me on my duties?" The female recoiled, daunted. Then Chloe signaled 2 protection officers. "You two, remove this guest from here immediately." The exhibition hall grew quiet, all attention focused on us. I lifted my hand steadily, halting the officers before they could advance. "I arrived to examine an asset. On what basis are you expelling me? Where's your supervisor?" "I'd like to converse with an authority figure." I faced the assembly. "You're all present to evaluate properties as well. Why don't you inform me? Have I committed anything improper?" The officers paused. I wasn't yielding, and they evidently didn't wish to entangle themselves in a complicated matter. Chloe remained with her limbs folded, sneering audibly. "Proceed, create a commotion. Let's witness how extensively you sustain this act." Just then, a youthful male in a neat pale blouse approached swiftly, displaying a refined, expert grin. "Good afternoon, madam. I'm Alex, the sales director for this venture. Is there a problem I can resolve?" Before I could utter a word, Chloe interjected. "Alex, she's only here for the giveaways." I was on the verge of having protection escort her out. Alex furrowed his brow slightly but maintained a polite manner. "Madam, would you mind presenting some form of economic confirmation? As you're aware, this is an exclusive event, and we do necessitate evidence of buying capacity." Without delay, I retrieved a binder. They already authenticated my papers at the entry. Chloe grabbed the binder from my grasp and opened it theatrically. "5 million? Are you joking?" she yelled, sufficiently loud for much of the hall to overhear. "A domestic servant? There's no possibility she possesses that amount. I understand her history better than anyone present." She appended smugly, "This must be counterfeit. We can't allow someone like her to deceive us." Alex stood there, brow deeply creased, obviously trapped in the midst. I didn't trouble disputing. Instead, I withdrew my device, accessed my financial application, and displayed it for them to view. The youthful aide inclined closer, tallying quietly to herself. 1 million, oh heavens, over 8 million. Gasps spread among the gathering, people's eyes enlarged, no longer critical, now astonished, inquisitive, even marginally admiring. Someone close to me whispered, "Wow, she's loaded with real funds." Chloe's complexion paled, shifting swiftly from flushed to ashen to spectral. She appeared as if she desired to disappear into the ground. But Chloe still refused to relent. She persisted, her speech biting and obstinate. "Alex, that financial app on her device must be fabricated. There's no way she has that sum." Alex's expression darkened, his forehead wrinkling profoundly. "Chloe, that's sufficient." Then he addressed me with a restrained, deferential manner. "Madam, I sincerely regret this. It's evidently been an error on our side, and we'll address it properly. I'll designate our most seasoned customer supervisor to aid you promptly." I gestured dismissively, providing a serene smile, then faced the young female who'd welcomed me earlier. "No necessity. She's entirely suitable, very competent." I want her to present the asset. Alex appeared somewhat uncomfortable. Actually, she recently began, still undergoing preparation, technically. I was only concerned she might lack adequate expertise, but I prefer her, I stated resolutely, allowing no space for debate. I'm acquiring the residence today, and I wish to proceed via her. Alex inclined his head right away, flustered but enthusiastic. Certainly, without question. Monica, ensure you provide outstanding service to our esteemed visitor. Chloe lingered to the side, her features rigid, her mouth quivering with contained irritation. She observed me depart, simmering, then whispered quietly, "Just a elevated errand runner pretending to be important." I disregarded her entirely and indicated the miniature replica at the hall's core. "I want to examine this one," I informed Monica. The instant I viewed that estate, I knew, towering heights in the main area, an expansive outdoor landscape, a solar space exceeding 200 square feet. Most crucially, it was completely equipped and prepared for occupancy. "I'll select this one," I declared without pause. "Let's initiate the documentation." Monica's gaze brightened with thrill. "Madam, are you certain you don't wish to inspect a few additional choices?" "I'm available. I'd gladly display others." "No requirement," I answered. "This one suffices amply." She could hardly suppress her delight. "Madam, this will be the initial transaction I've completed. You're my fortunate symbol." We proceeded to the agreement zone, and as I examined the forms, a subdued buzz commenced behind me. Wow, she just committed without hesitation. 1.5 million, didn't even hesitate. Wealth speaks, huh? That's authentic prosperity. "Don't be misled," someone murmured. "Didn't Chloe mention she's merely a domestic servant? Probably displaying her boss's funds. Nowadays, even helpers know how to perform. But she's just strutting with another's credit. Seriously, what sort of boss would entrust a servant with that level of cash? Millions." Then Chloe's voice pierced the murmurs, infused with that rumor-spreading poison she mastered so well. "Oh, you have no clue. She's not your typical domestic servant." "No? Then what is she?" "She's one of those resident aides for affluent elderly males. You know, not just cleaning and sweeping, if you grasp my meaning." "No way, at her years? That's simply disgraceful." "Ugh, some individuals will trade anything for cash." "If her relatives knew, wouldn't they feel ashamed?" I placed the agreement down and faced Monica. "Monica," I said with a steady grin, "could you please summon Alex for me once more? I'd like to acquire another asset." The space fell utterly silent, as if the atmosphere itself solidified. Monica's eyes broadened, her speech quivering with incredulity. "Madam, you're certain you desire another?" "That's correct," I responded calmly, "one for residence, one for capital growth." Then I grinned a bit broader. "Although I do have a minor request I'd like Alex to assist with." Alex reappeared quickly, his grin more radiant than previously, virtually beaming with zeal. "Hello again, madam. Please inform me how I can help." "I've verified the acquisition of the initial asset," I stated. "I'm prepared to finalize the agreement, and I'd like to include a second unit too." But I hesitated, my manner turning frosty. "I anticipate your group to rectify the unsuitable conduct of specific employees." Alex's grin diminished. His gaze scanned the space and swiftly settled on Chloe. "Chloe," he stated sharply, "are you creating issues again? Apologize to the customer now." Chloe elevated her jaw rebelliously, declining to yield. "Why should I express regret? I merely stated the facts. She used to be a domestic cleaner, one of those resident varieties who serves only wealthy elderly males. And don't regard me that way," her offspring said it himself. I gradually raised my head, eyes constricting as I stared straight at her. "You're claiming my offspring told you that? Then allow me to reciprocate. He also once mentioned that your collection of completed transactions didn't stem from your alleged abilities, but from the evenings you spent in intimate encounters with your customers. Is that accurate?" Chloe's complexion drained, her mouth quivered. "You're fabricating. That's libel." "Oh, didn't you just libel me a few moments ago? Now you abruptly comprehend what slander signifies?" I faced Alex, who promptly grasped the signal, his look turned severe. "Chloe, that's enough. Protection, escort her from the premises, and as of this day, you're dismissed." Chloe became frantic, moisture gathering in her eyes, overflowing. Alex, I wasn't fabricating. She truly used to be a cleaner. But Alex's manner stayed resolute. You've breached company behavior guidelines in a grave manner. Your position is terminated effective now. I lifted my hand to halt the protection officers from advancing. Hold on, I stated calmly. She's not departing yet. She publicly libeled me, and I'm not overlooking this. Right there, I extracted my device and dialed. Hello, yes, this is the law enforcement office. I'd like to report defamation and public disturbance. 10 minutes afterward, 2 law officers arrived at the exhibition hall. After listening to my narrative and assessing the occurrence, they delivered Chloe official caution and clarified distinctly, if she didn't provide a public expression of regret, I had full authority to pursue charges. Trapped and trembling with fury, Chloe ultimately muttered through gritted teeth, "I'm sorry." She directed one final spiteful look at me and Monica before departing angrily, her gaze seething with jealousy, particularly when she observed Monica gearing up to finalize the second transaction, the same Monica she'd belittled merely an hour prior. Now the standout performer of the day. By the conclusion, I executed agreements for both assets, settled in full without hesitation. Monica lingered by my side, eyes glistening with feeling. She could scarcely articulate. "Madam, I can't express enough gratitude. I've been employed here 3 months without a single completion, and today 2 units consecutively. You're truly my wonder." To demonstrate her appreciation, she demanded to personally organize thorough sanitation and relocation preparation for me. I accepted gladly. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely unburdened, as if all the degradation, bitterness, and acrimony had been cleared away like debris beyond my new estate entrances. That evening, just as I returned to my lodging, my device rang. "Ethan, so what on earth did you do to sabotage Chloe's position? Her entire relatives are pursuing us now, seeking explanations. How do you plan to resolve this?" I replied casually. "Let them pursue. That's your concern now. Didn't I already declare we're severed? I owe you nothing. You created discord and now anticipate us to manage the consequences? That's not fair." That ignited my temper. "Discord? Are you serious?" Chloe libeled me openly. She invited it upon herself. The authorities were present. Do you think they appeared for amusement? If this escalates into a larger problem, don't assume you'll escape unscathed either. Ethan fell silent momentarily. When he responded, his manner had noticeably mellowed. All right, let's just proceed. By the way, there was that tentative manner, that deliberate change in curiosity. So, Mom, who's your new boss really? They must be incredibly wealthy, and they appear to be handling you quite nicely too, huh?" I chuckled inwardly to myself. There it was once more, the aroma of wealth, and he was probing like a tracker. "It doesn't matter who they are, it has no relation to you. Ethan, let me declare it once more, we're severed permanently." And with that, I terminated the conversation and obstructed every contact from him, Nicole, and their whole relatives. But what I hadn't anticipated was that merely a few days after settling into my new dwelling, I encountered someone I hadn't intended to meet again, Susan. That afternoon, I was at a premium keyboard showroom in the central area, browsing selections for a large keyboard. I just positioned myself on the seat, prepared to experiment with the notes, when the entrance doors opened wide and a rush of steps resounded through the venue. In entered Susan, encircled by her constant group of societal companions, their voices boisterous and piercing with conceit. "What sort of establishment is this?" Susan sneered, allowing just anyone to sit and pound on a keyboard? How lacking in standards. Her gaze fixed on me, and the mockery virtually oozed from her grin. "Margaret, did you even cleanse your hands before contacting that device? Weren't you in domestic service all these years? Heaven knows what sort of bacteria you've got swarming on your digits. Who would have imagined such a costly keyboard could be so carelessly tainted?" Her small group giggled and whispered amongst themselves, regarding me with scarcely concealed disdain. "So that's the servant relative you mentioned?" One of them inquired, not even attempting to quiet her voice. "Can't afford to acquire one, so she visits here just to feign." How mortifying. Another female, her tresses arranged in a striking knot and large shades balanced on her nose, gave me a contemptuous appraisal. Ugh, nothing more aggravating than someone attempting to appear refined while toting imitation purses. The two showroom attendants exchanged a discreet look, evidently uneasy. One of them neared me and provided a warm, expert grin. "Please proceed with testing the keyboard, madam. That's precisely its purpose. No acquisition necessary." I inclined my head courteously, then returned to the notation and ready to perform, attempting to alleviate the increasing strain in the space. The other attendant approached Susan and her assembly. "Ladies, welcome. Is there a specific type you'd like to view? I'd be delighted to guide you through our assortment." Susan directed a frosty glance at me, then replied cuttingly, "We were planning to browse, but now I'm uncertain. Evidently, this establishment doesn't value its devices or its patrons." I offered the establishment attendant a serene grin and stated clearly, "I'll require a bit more time to experiment with a few." I fully planned to complete an acquisition today. The female with the knot sneered and settled into a nearby couch, limbs crossed. "Sure you do. I'll just remain right here and observe how you maneuver out of this. Can't wait to witness how you slip away without purchasing anything." Susan pulled her companion's limb. "Come on, let's depart for elsewhere. Just being near individuals like this ruins my disposition." But I knew better. Susan had already learned from Chloe that I'd acquired 2 estates. She was evidently unsure whether to trust it and fearful I might demonstrate her incorrect again, but her companion wasn't so readily persuaded. "I'm staying precisely here," the knot-haired female stated with a smirk. "I won't rest tonight if I don't see this female fail spectacularly." Her remarks appeared to energize the rest of the assembly. They all lingered, awaiting what they presumed would be an amusing fiasco. I selected one of my preferred compositions and allowed my digits to descend softly on the notes. The tones drifted into the space, gentle and consistent, the harmony of Moonlight Sonata streaming through the atmosphere. The knot-haired female distorted her mouth in derision and snorted. "What even is that? Sounds like chaos. Who instructed her to perform? She thinks she fits in a keyboard store with that disorder? Give me a break." But before I could reply, the attendant by my side began applauding, sincere appreciation in his gaze. "Madam, that was exquisite. Honestly, that's one of the most touching interpretations of Moonlight Sonata I've encountered in ages." The knot-haired female rolled her eyes so intensely she almost toppled. Oh please, if she was that skilled, she wouldn't be trapped in whatever stagnant existence she's leading now. "Your compliments are a tad too transparent, dear." Just then, a few young individuals entered the showroom. They didn't utter a word, merely positioned themselves behind me, listening silently. The moment I removed my digits from the notes, a burst of impromptu cheers arose from behind. "Wow, that was extraordinary. I've trained on keyboard for many years, and I still can't evoke that degree of feeling in Moonlight Sonata. Seriously, you conveyed the entire misty, surreal atmosphere so seamlessly. You're incredible." Susan lingered nearby, her forehead tightening, eyes narrowing in unspoken bewilderment. She couldn't seem to comprehend it. How could someone she'd always dismissed perform with such elegance, such proficiency? Truth be told, I owed this instance of tranquility, of melody, to my deceased boss. She originated from a distinguished lineage, the most graceful, genuine female I've ever known. She never once belittled me. In fact, she handled me more like a sibling than a worker. Whenever she had leisure, she encouraged me to participate in studying music, artwork, writing, and I never dismissed it. I learned with commitment, profoundly thankful for her kindness and endurance. Over the years, she didn't merely alter my way of life, she reshaped my whole essence. I proceeded performing, letting the notes transport my reflections, while the knot-haired female's expression soured amid the increasing flow of commendation. She bowed her head, clearly disturbed. Then, in one final frantic effort to preserve dignity, she jerked her head upward. "So, what if you can perform one tune? Big achievement. If you're really that remarkable, settle for the keyboard right now." I'd already decided. Calmly, I passed my card to the attendant. "Thank you, madam," he stated cheerfully. "That'll be $155,000. I input my code. Transaction confirmed. Madam, may I have your name to complete the bill? He inquired. Of course, I responded and inscribed it, Margaret Turner. The knot-haired female blanched. Her head snapped towards Susan in disbelief. You said she worked for someone else, that the estates she acquired weren't even hers. Susan's features altered. She advanced, her look caught between skepticism and something much more complex. You acquired this keyboard yourself? And those 2 estates, those were yours too? I grinned. The bills and agreements bear my name. If they're not mine, then whose would they be? Yours? Her features contorted instantly, a tempest of astonishment, jealousy, doubt, and sour remorse flashing across it. Margaret, you were merely a domestic servant. Where did all that wealth originate? Every dollar I expend was obtained legitimately and deservedly. My speech was biting, frigid. Susan sneered. Oh please, you must have engaged in something dubious to acquire it. The knot-haired female interjected right away. Yeah, maybe she's a fraudster. That's how people accumulate quick wealth these days. No sooner had those words escaped her lips than another female who'd been silent all this time abruptly snapped. What fraudster? Don't even jest about that. She groped for her device, her palms trembling. Hello, 911? I need the authorities. There's a swindler here. Before anyone could respond, she disconnected and charged toward me, attempting to clutch my attire in a burst of fury. The establishment staff hurried to restrain her. She was sobbing, yelling, entirely frantic. And finally, I comprehended the cause behind her outburst. She'd been deceived out of over $100,000 6 months prior. She'd never recovered it. And the anguish still festered so profoundly within her that the mere reference to fraud shattered her restraint. Her rage wasn't directed at me. It was aimed at a phantom from her history. The authorities arrived promptly, and to my astonishment, it was the identical 2 officers I'd encountered the day I acquired the estates. One of them arched his brows in familiarity, a grin pulling at his lips' edge. Oh, it's you again, madam. I inclined my head politely, but before I could speak, the curly-haired female leaped up and shouted, She's a swindler, officer. Detain her immediately. The officer's grin faded. He turned grave. Madam, do you possess any evidence of this claim? Evidence? She retorted. Of course not. I'm just offering a lead. You should examine her yourselves. I mean, come on, how could a housemaid afford estates in Grand Pios? Does that seem ordinary to you? The officer sighed, extending his hands. Maybe she won the jackpot. It occurs. Susan promptly interjected, her manner biting. Her winning the jackpot? Don't be absurd. She's never experienced a fortunate day in her existence. Grew up without guardians, unsuccessful union, low-status occupations. People like her don't get fortunate, they get frantic. She has no schooling, no professional trajectory. What else could she have done besides some questionable dealings to obtain that kind of wealth? The officers look hardened. Madam, I recommend you monitor your statements. Claims without proof constitute libel and individual assaults. We can initiate a proceeding if necessary. Susan's complexion paled. She silenced instantly. A whirl of feelings stirred inside me, irritation, anguish, wrath, but mostly lucidity. Existence hadn't been simple. I'd matured solitary. After the separation, I strained to sustain a son who never valued anything I did, and now the very individuals who'd once profited from my forfeitures were utilizing my most vulnerable moments as weapons to assail me. If I had an adversary in existence, it was Susan, her daughter Nicole, and Ethan. They weren't merely thankless. They were the true afflictions in my narrative. But now I finally perceived them for their true nature. I extracted my device, accessed my financial app, and without a word, directed the display towards Susan, holding it up so she and everyone else could observe. You don't wish to see me content? Too bad. It seems destiny had different intentions. See the over 8 million, all legitimate, all mine. No illicit secrets, no deceptions, just favors you'll never fathom. If that disgusts you, well, I hope it spoils your hunger. You want to charge me with advancing through intimacy? Proceed, sue me. I'll be awaiting. Susan's water vessel slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor with a resounding crash. I could almost detect the fracture of her arrogance breaking. 8 million? How in the world do you possess that sum? Her speech trembled, alarm piercing through her skepticism. Then her look contorted, almost as if a realization had just dawned. Oh, now I understand. That's why you severed connections with your son, you became wealthy and discarded him like refuse. How merciless, Margaret. You're astonishing. I faced her, my manner biting, unswerving. Don't distort the narrative, Susan. I was prepared to bequeath every cent to your daughter and my son. That was my intention. But then you two concluded I was a liability the moment I left my position. You expelled me from the residence like waste. You think I overlooked that residence you're occupying? Every dollar that purchased it originated from me? And not only did you evict me, you wanted me to clean surfaces at a subpar care facility just to keep generating for your household. You even proposed I go labor for some affluent elderly male as his resident aide. Heaven knows what services you envisioned. Tell me, Susan, do you even retain a fragment of integrity? I could have granted your entire household an existence of opulence, but no, not an opportunity. You destroyed it yourselves. I faced the expanding group of spectators. Tell me, doesn't this collection of ingrates merit all they've forfeited? The crowd's vibe shifted. Their gazes, once filled with rumors, now overflowed with criticism directed squarely at Susan and her companions. Susan's features flushed crimson, like a deceiver exposed during the act. You're fabricating. We never said you should go labor for some elderly male. Oh, I responded calmly. Should I broadcast the audio for everyone here? Let them hear your precise statements. Her complexion blanched, and for a second, I saw genuine terror in her gaze. That audio is probably altered. I'm not heeding that rubbish. Her speech broke as she pivoted away, withdrawing toward the exit. Margaret, you're vicious to the core. You'll receive your due someday. And with that, she exited furiously, closing the door forcefully behind her. I finally released a breath. It was concluded for now. But I knew better than to believe it was genuinely over. With that much wealth at stake, individuals like Susan and Ethan never remained silent for long. What I hadn't foreseen was how swiftly Ethan would slink back into the scene. The very next morning, the front desk delivered an enormous arrangement of blooms, asserting someone had deposited it at the entrance for me. I furrowed my brow, hauled the blooms inside, and rummaged through them. Right in the midst was a note, wishing you a wonderful weekend. Love, your son Ethan. I nearly erupted into laughter, disgusted to the core. It was so brazen it was almost humorous. Without pause, I grasped the arrangement and hurled it directly into the cooking area waste bin. Then I captured an image, crushed blossoms, bent stalks, and the wrinkled note all in one shot and transmitted it to the gatehouse. From now on, reject anything dispatched by this individual. Also, kindly convey him this picture. I didn't just want him denied, I wanted him mortified. Sure enough, I never received another arrangement from him again, but he didn't surrender, he merely intensified. He commenced lingering outside the secured neighborhood every single day, rain or shine, weekday or weekend, he'd be there, skulking, desperate. Every time I arrived or departed, he'd enact another pathetic display, like a figure in a low-budget drama. One day, he even fell to his knees on the walkway, weeping uncontrollably. Mom, please don't be upset anymore. Return home. I was mistaken, Mom. No matter what, I'm still your son. How can you be this indifferent to me? I didn't even trouble glancing at him. His dramatics only made my flesh creep. Eventually, I grew so weary of the spectacle that I employed a dedicated chauffeur. Every day, I sat in the rear with the panes raised, gliding past the main entrance directly into my estate's storage, no visual contact, no dialogue, no opportunity for him to approach me. Ethan persisted for 2 full weeks, but once it became evident I wasn't relenting, he finally ceased, at least, I assumed he did. That's when he altered strategies. He delved into records and somehow succeeded in contacting my former spouse, Richard, who had once been Ethan's dad too. That's when matters truly started to unravel in a manner I hadn't predicted. Ethan wasn't attempting to mend anymore. He was attempting to dominate me, coerce me, dismantle me entirely. It became clear, if he couldn't obtain what he desired, he'd prefer to witness me ruined. One afternoon, my device rang. It was Richard. We hadn't communicated in over 2 decades. I had no notion how he even acquired my contact. "I just thought I'd alert you," he stated casually. "Ethan visited me. He sobbed and implored me to persuade you to return home." I don't know what transpired between you two, and honestly, I told him that's not my affair. I just reminded him I'm not his natural dad. I even added that whatever's occurring between the pair of you has no connection to me. I'm an external party. But he maintained I was deceiving. He even appeared at my workplace, causing a disturbance. I had no option but to undergo a kinship test to silence him. I didn't disclose the complete truth to him, though. I honored my commitment from all those years ago. I didn't expose his actual origins. So, in summary, he now knows I'm not his dad, but you're still his sole and only parent. I disconnected, already preparing myself. I knew it was only a question of time before Ethan appeared at my door again. When he did, I'd be prepared. I'd reveal everything, the truth he was so eager to evade. I'd instruct him to locate the parent who deserted him in a waste container and cease attempting to shred my existence. But that clash never materialized. Instead, Ethan veered into a gloomier path, a path I hadn't foreseen. Roughly a week afterward, I observed something odd. The way residents in the area regarded me had altered. Their glances persisted longer, their grins became slimmer, more strained. I dismissed it initially, until Monica contacted me one afternoon. "Margaret, I just wanted to express that I know you're a decent individual. Please don't let what people are stating distress you." I was perplexed. What are people stating? That's when I discovered what had truly been transpiring. I'd become a web phenomenon, but not the positive variety. Ethan had initiated daily live broadcasts on a well-known online platform. His stream heading, "How My Mother Deserted Me." I accessed it and viewed the complete scenario. He hadn't directly charged me with being a paramour or anything sensational. No, he'd crafted something far more cunning, a manipulative tale of woe, depicting himself as a devastated, forsaken offspring while distorting me into the frigid, merciless, avaricious antagonist. In his broadcasts, he uttered things like, "My mother never truly cared for me. I labored so diligently, studied so assiduously, and she wouldn't even assist me in the minor ways. The year I entered higher education, she departed for another urban area to serve as a resident aide for affluent individuals, leaving me to reside alone in a small leased unit. When I wed, she didn't donate a single dollar. Even when my spouse became expectant, she never provided an iota of aid. Now that she's abruptly prosperous, she's severed me entirely, as if I never existed. I don't even desire funds. I just want her to recognize me as her offspring. But she won't even utter my name. She resides in a grand home now, travels in premium vehicles, and relishes an elite existence while I get criticized and degraded on the streets. The feedback area detonated. People divided into two groups. Some empathized with him. Others labeled me merciless. And of course, there were the agitators. A parent like that doesn't merit the title. She should feel disgrace. He's so unfortunate. I'd do anything to provide him the affection he never received. His live broadcast exploded. His audience count soared. He even began vending items and goods on his stream, capitalizing on the surge of compassion. Donations from his alleged backers. "This will be the comfort your mother never offered. You merit better, dear boy. She doesn't merit joy." And then matters turned even more repulsive. People commenced excavating into my private existence. My identity, my image, my location, all of it began spreading in feedback areas and shares. I'd officially become the symbol of an online antagonist, the most callous parent on the web. And then that evening, my device rang again. This time, it was my legal advisor. "Margaret, we can advance with judicial measures immediately," my legal advisor stated. "We can request elimination of libelous material, demand a public expression of regret, and seek reimbursement for harms." I hesitated for a few seconds, then grinned calmly. "No hurry. Let him continue his act a bit longer. I plan to handle this personally first." That same evening, I created my own profile on StreamEt and initiated my own live stream. I titled it, "So This is the Mom Who Deserted Ethan." First, I entered Ethan's broadcast and dispatched several thousand in contributions, instantly capturing notice and surging the live discussion feed. Then I transmitted a message across the display for all to view. Hi everyone, I'm the callous parent Ethan's been discussing. He's been sobbing for weeks, claiming I severed his monetary aid. Come to my stream. I'll reveal the truth tonight. I'm distributing $100,000 in cash rewards. Join if interested, first arrivals first. Within seconds, a deluge of spectators shifted to my broadcast. Traffic escalated dramatically, and I began dispensing the assured prizes. The feedback area detonated with enthusiasm. Thank you, generous lady. This is the authentic material. Queen of content, taking notes. She's more affectionate than my own parent. Capitalizing on the viral surge, I formally commenced my live presentation. I didn't waste time embellishing. I addressed the lens directly. First off, yes, I did sever economic connections with Ethan, but that doesn't render me callous, and it certainly doesn't mean I've forsaken him. People merit the complete narrative. I didn't depart because I ceased caring for him. I departed because his avarice became intolerable. When I initially obtained the legacy from my deceased boss, my aim was to bequeath it all to Ethan and his spouse. But do you know their reaction? Instead of thankfulness, they charged me with intending to sponge and united to expel me from the residence. They even proposed I relocate with an arbitrary senior male as his resident aide because, in their view, my only worth was persisting in labor and channeling funds into their family. To them, I wasn't a parent, I was a financial resource. As I spoke, I presented a digitized copy of the inheritance papers from my prior boss, a legally certified declaration indicating I'd inherited roughly more than $8 million in holdings. The wealth I possess originated from a valid inheritance bestowed upon me by a female who regarded me as kin. She had no offspring of her own and designated me her only heir. The feedback detonated again. Missed $9 million? What sort of boss does that? Finally, fate compensating a kind soul. This isn't indifference, it's insight. Of course, not everyone was persuaded. A few doubters emerged. Still, you're his parent, aren't you? Supposed to sustain your offspring? Severing him after matrimony sounds quite ruthless. I replied calmly, without flinching. Let me inquire this. Does sustaining an offspring mean you're supposed to be their eternal cash dispenser? I nurtured him solo since he was 1 year old, covered his educational expenses, acquired him a residence. What did I receive in exchange? Doubt, dismissal, disrespect, and being compelled out of my own dwelling. They desired me to keep laboring like a device to subsidize their way of life while treating me like a liability. Then I revealed the ultimate evidence. An audio capture of Ethan on the line attempting to organize for me to become a resident aide for a senior male. The conversation had been recorded by the senior male's home protection setup. It was irrefutable verification. The feedback detonated again. Unbelievable. This isn't just freeloading, it's economic mistreatment. Severing him isn't brutality, it's self-preservation. This is what manipulated remorse appears like. He's not weeping for affection, he's weeping for wealth. Good for you, madam. That offspring merited being severed. I knew this was merely the start. Ethan didn't long for a parent. He longed for his fund supply. In this conflict, it had only just commenced. I observed the influx of feedback on the display and released a small, silent chuckle. Then I inclined toward the lens and addressed the viewers directly. The reality is, there was never any necessity to sever ties with Ethan. Instantly, inquiry symbols filled the feedback feed. I proceeded calmly. Because Ethan was never my natural offspring to begin with. I took him in when I was assisting at a local shelter. He was just 1 year old then, born with a severe innate cardiac defect and deserted by his birth guardians in a waste container. He was barely holding on to existence when I discovered him. I brought him home out of pure empathy. I expended every cent I possessed to secure him medical attention. And my separation from my ex-spouse, that wasn't about disloyalty. It was because he demanded a natural offspring and refused to persist in nurturing Ethan. I was given an option: return Ethan to the shelter or end my union and nurture him alone. I chose Ethan. I forfeited my union, forfeited the opportunity to have my own offspring just to grant him a shot at existence. I toiled overnight rotations, waited on patrons, cleaned dwellings, whatever it required. I scrimped and saved until he was robust again. I supported him through higher education. I even acquired him a residence with my earned funds, and what did I get in exchange? He refused to permit me to reside in that very residence. He evicted me like an outsider. Now he's defaming me online, asserting I've forsaken him, and even circulating rumors that I advanced through intimacy to wealth. Tell me, how should I react to someone like that? As I spoke, I uploaded a series of images, hospital charges, medical bills, educational payment records, public transport passes, all the pieces of an existence spent giving, a lifetime of renunciation preserved in documents and print. The feedback detonated. He's despicable. Who does that to a female who preserved his existence? He exploited his adoptive parent like a rag, then discarded her. Revolting. Residing in the residence she funded and still evicted her. Unbelievable. Destiny granted him existence. She granted him everything else, and he turned and stabbed her in the back. The reaction was immediate. Viewers surged back into Ethan's broadcast and began overwhelming his feedback area with outrage. How could we ever back someone like you? Shame on you. You portrayed the victim while draining your parent dry. You're the callous one, not her. Ethan's features turned visibly ashen on camera. Why are you all trusting her? He shouted. She's deceiving. If I wasn't her actual offspring, why did she do all that for me? She's controlling you. No one would go that far for a youngster that isn't theirs. Back on my broadcast, more viewers demanded solid verification. Without pause, I uploaded a digitized copy of the official adoption document. This is the government-issued record, verified, public, and genuine. The feedback area erupted once again. That's it. End of debate. She's speaking the truth. This isn't just disloyalty, it's ethical collapse. He exploited her affection, her funds, her existence, and still attempted to ruin her. Report him. He doesn't merit a platform, and just when I thought it couldn't worsen, Ethan intensified. So, what if I wasn't her real kid? She didn't have to rescue me. I never requested it. Maybe if she hadn't taken me in, I would have been taken in by a genuine family. She demolished my existence. She never should have meddled with my destiny. That was the ultimate trigger. The web detonated. You're angry she rescued you? That's the most revolting thing I've ever heard. Let the entire world witness this fiend's true nature. Report him now. In less than a day, public sentiment reversed entirely. Ethan transitioned from forsaken victim to thankless, leech-feeding on his adoptive parents' essence. His broadcasting channel was indefinitely halted by the platform. That same evening, my legal advisor filed an official libel and disturbance lawsuit against him, demanding monetary reimbursement for harms. We also sought a court order to lawfully forbid him from issuing any further libelous declarations or assailing me via online platforms. Eventually, the judiciary decided in our favor. Ethan was deemed culpable of breaching digital security and libel regulations. He was mandated to pay harms and cover all judicial costs. His broadcasting rights were withdrawn, his online profiles permanently prohibited. For me, I was finally entirely liberated. There was no longer any remnant of Ethan in my existence, and there never would be again. Another 6 months elapsed, and I finally recovered the residence that had once been mine through a detailed judicial procedure. My legal team successfully overturned the property possession. The day everything was concluded, I stood in the main area, gazing at the familiar drapes, observing sunlight pour across the wooden surface. For the first time in years, I felt truly unburdened, like I'd finally released after suppressing my breath for decades. A few days afterward, Susan's daughter, Ethan's spouse, filed for separation. She executed the documents in her legal advisor's office with total composure, not uttering a single superfluous word. It was evident she'd seen him for his true self, a man who complained about being mistreated but never accepted accountability, full of bitterness, but entirely lacking in self-insight. And, just like that, Ethan disappeared from my existence completely. I didn't inquire about his whereabouts, and I had no desire to reflect. Years passed. Then one day, While conversing with an old acquaintance at a cafe, she mentioned casually, "I heard Ethan fled to Canada. He's always online boasting about how liberated and simple existence is there." Out of curiosity, I searched his name online. What I discovered was disturbing. The video footage depicted him unkempt and stooped beside a refuse container on a street edge, chewing on a segment of moldy loaf with empty, unfocused gaze. Sometimes he'd erupt into a frenzied grin, other times, he'd dissolve into uncontrollable weeping that racked his entire frame. He'd lost his sanity. The same man who once positioned himself before a lens, depicting me as the antagonist, angling for compassion, trading grief for notice, had become precisely what he merited, a specter on the fringes of actual existence. But I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel wrath anymore either. He had simply become the outcome of his own selections. No quantity of audience could rescue him. No quantity of deceptions could sustain his narrative. He forfeited the compassion he'd pilfered. He ruined the honesty he never cherished. And eventually, existence did what it always does. It overtook him. As for me, I was finally concluded with a struggle that had exhausted me for over 3 decades. The 2 estates I'd acquired impulsively during that bleak phase, I disposed of them during the property market rise and departed with a substantial gain. What once represented rage and resistance had transformed into the base of my subsequent phase. Eventually, I relocated to a serene lakeside community on the city's western boundary. It wasn't the most costly district, but it was everything I'd ever desired. Sunlight flooding the panes, my landscape flourishing with wisteria and blooms, the cooking area always scented with my preferred strong brew coffee. My painting stand positioned beneath the foliage, awaiting leisurely afternoons of artistry. The atmosphere was pure, the world leisurely, and existence tender. No one addressed me as mom anymore just to request something. No one charged me with being indifferent. No one asserted I hadn't done sufficient. For the first time, I could hear my own respiration in the melody, in the sunlight. For the first time, I finally belonged to myself. Sometimes people still inquire, "Do you regret taking an Ethan?" I used to ponder that question extensively, but now, when I hear it, I just smile gently and shake my head. No, I say, I don't regret it. I only regret not realizing sooner that compassion should never be exercised at the expense of self-ruin. Learning to safeguard myself was the most vital lesson I ever acquired in the latter part of my existence. I was never a flawless individual, never a holy figure, but I became something far superior, a female who finally existed for herself. And it turned out that wasn't too delayed at all.